Charles Kirk is still alive. He was never shot by any bullet.
Hello and welcome back to TriggerSmart. Now, I put a poll out and I said, do we want to have Algeist back again? And a majority of you said, yes, 100%. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about the information on the previous stream for his version of what he thinks happened to Charlie. And we're going to give you more detail and make it more succinct so that it makes perfect sense to you. He's going to show you the physics and some of the math behind why some of the other methods may not be useful.
Hi guys, I am very delighted to hear that you wanted to have me back. Yes, I am the guy that said that classical physics proves beyond any doubt that the shot went into the trunk. The shot was fired from a distance of 140 yards out at the sniper's nest. The shot went into the trunk, and I can prove this by evaluating all the audio tracks from the smartphone footage that was taken at the UVU campus on 9/10. There was a clear line of sight from the sniper to the trunk. The shot missed the guard Brian Harpole by less than a meter. And I can prove all this by doing a very standard crack thumb analysis. It was a standard shot. It had an impact velocity of 2,500 feet per second, and it had an initial speed of 2,750 feet per second. I think it's best if we focus mainly on the shot today and to not get too confused, but I also said that there was a prosthetic on Charlie Kirk that was synced with the gunshot. This means it went off at the same time, and that his wound was not real. It was similar to special effects in movies, and Charles Kirk is still alive. He was never shot by any bullet.
So just to be clear, you're saying that Charlie Kirk is alive. They faked his death. They used a prosthetic on him, and that would also cover the shirt flying out, the blood that people see, his chain popping up, and all that stuff is basically special effects and things with that prosthetic. And then you're saying that the shot that everyone heard, that other audio engineers are saying are on the mic and they picked up as well, is actually hitting the trunk instead of hitting Charlie, correct?
Yes, 100% correct. You summarized it very well.
All right, and we are going to use science and physics to explain all of this, correct?
Correct. Nothing but classical physics. Let's get into it, yes. Okay, guys, so to give you an idea of the sniper's nest, I'm going to show you the intro of my video on my channel again, just to get you back into the entire UVU situation on 9/10. Let's let it roll. The bullet went into the trunk. It missed Charles Kirk by some 4.5 meters, and Charles Kirk essentially faked his death. He faked getting shot. It was all acted.
So what specifically happened to Charlie then?
Charlie is still alive. Nothing happened to him. The worst thing that could have happened to him is that the air puff under his shirt knocked him out. But aside of that, he is alive and kicking.
So now, I did a video where I was showing prosthetics and like the air-actuated blood and that kind of stuff, and they were really bulky and kind of in the way. But you have something that you can show that actually shows a better version of that, right?
Yeah, guys. And here you can see that this shoulder of the actor is not real, and this wound is not real. All of this is a prosthetic. This is just a layer of silicone that is roughly 1 inch thick that is placed on top of the actual shoulder of this actor, but it looks very realistic.
Very real, yep.
And some tubes, the tubes that they put in there, they use these tubes for the blood and the air. This is how they hit, where they hit the tubes.
Creating this hit took an air pressurizer, a gnarly prosthetic, building the look of depth.
Prosthetic makeup is an additive process, so you can only add, you can't take away. It also has to work into the rest of the person's body.
So if people are wondering, what would they actually be shooting to in the trunk? Wouldn't that go through the car and hit someone else?
No, they had something very special in that trunk. It was a block of ballistic rubber. You can buy that for just a couple of $100. You put it in the trunk, you shoot into it, or you can also reinforce the interior of the trunk like a bulletproof vest. Yeah, and this makes everything very safe. There is no danger that you damage the interior of the car. And the bullet is also not gonna strike through the wall of that car, exiting and landing somewhere in that tunnel. No, you just catch that bullet and it will not be recovered by any investigator. This is the entire idea of shooting into the trunk.
Now, people had another question too. They were saying that, like the trunk opened, the shot happened, and then the trunk closes. Does the timing actually match?
That is a very good question, Matthew. The trunk was closed within 19 seconds after the shot. Let's observe. So he falls down, and right around here, they must have closed it, because when this observer flees the stands, we can see the trunk closed after 19 seconds. And this means they must have closed the trunk within 19 seconds after that shot. And this person here very likely knows who closed the trunk.
So part of what he claims that he can prove this with is classical physics as well as audio forensic analysis. So he's going to kind of jump into a little bit of that.
Yeah, guys, where do I get these smartphone videos from? I get it from this website. It's called archive.org/download/Kirk shooting. And here you can find all the smartphone recordings from 9/10. I can just show you one. This is a very popular recording. Just click on it and it will open. And this is where you can find all the smartphone recordings. And then I started my analysis. And then I created this huge Excel table here with all the calculations and all the crack thumb values. How did I get the crack thumb values? I got them with Audacity. I listened to it repeatedly over various days, some 10 times, 20 times, maybe 100 times, and I calculated the crack and thump sounds. Now, these spikes here are a very good orientation to determine the crack and the thump. In this case, we can say that this here is the crack and this is the thump. And we can see that it is pretty much 0.133 seconds long if we subtract these two values down here. And we can do this with every video on that site, archive.org. Not just with one video here on this site, no, with all the videos that have a good audio quality. And that's what I did. And this is how I created this huge Excel table. So here we can see the crack and thump value for Bartholomew 0.133 that we just determined. What's next? Now we're going to get into the cones. I created two sets of cones. The first set is the trunk shot cones. Here I have the cone for 2,500 feet per second. I just put it in line with the trajectory into the trunk, and then I extend it, in this case, to the position of Adam Bartholomew. What I do then is I remember this position to measure the distance between the sniper's nest and this position in Google Maps for my calculations. And I don't do that just with the position of Adam Bartholomew. I do it with all the positions. Here is recording 7. Here is recording 2. And also recording 5. I also do this with the cones of a potential Kirk shot. I do exactly the same thing. Here I take the cone for 2,700 feet per second. I put it where the sniper was. And then I extend it until I reach the positions of the observer, in this case Adam Bartholomew. And then I go to recording 7, to recording 2, and to recording 5. That's how you handle the cones. And then we can insert these distances here into these cells to make our calculations. And here's how we get the distances. I have the German version here, but you can do that in the version of your language. It's just a simple distance measurement. We can measure the distances of the sniper to the observer. And this is just how you get the distances. It is pretty standard. I guess most of you can do that on your laptop as well. Here I just show you how I get all the distances from the sniper to the observer that we also need in our Excel table.
So a lot of people have questioned the Mach cone measurement. They're saying that if the bullet travels past the point of impact, so in this case it would be the trunk, then that would negate that measurement. They're saying that that Mach cone wouldn't work because the bullet traveled past that person. If it doesn't travel past that person, so if it stopped in the trunk, these people are saying that the Mach cone couldn't extend past that.
Yeah, here is where it gets really complicated. I think we need the help of a famous physics YouTuber, and that is Destin Sandlin from Smarter Every Day. Destin, can you tell us what a Mach cone is made up of?
So let's imagine that we've got this bullet sitting here and we've got circles emitting from the front. As we move this thing, watch what happens. Those circles will stack up in the front and they kind of relax in the back and they expand, right? So that's a normal flight. What happens if the velocity at which we move this thing outruns those circles moving away? Check this out. As we start to outrun it, you'll notice that we get this expansion in the back here and it tapers down and we get this angle. We get this, I don't know what you want to call it, right? We've got a cone here. What happens if we move forward even faster? That angle that we made there is even shallower or pointier. That's called the Mach angle.
Destin explained it really well. The Mach cone is made up of these circles. What are these circles? These circles, that's the sound signals traveling outward in a concentric circle, in a very plain old circle. Now, for this big circle here, just imagine a center, and this signal, this sound signal from the center, it traveled outwards in the very same distance when the bullet was exactly here. So this bullet, when it was here, caused the sound signal to just travel outwards. And when the bullet is in this position, the sound signal has already traveled outward to this place. And we don't just have this circle here. We have a lot of circles, and all of these circles form the Mach cone. Yeah, guys, let's first cover what happens in reality. In reality, we don't have a tip of the Mach cone after the bullet hits the trunk. We don't have any tip. But in my calculations, many of you noted that I just let this Mach cone run as if the bullet was still flying. So let's compare these two alternatives. You can see that the distances are pretty much the same, no matter whether we cut off the tip or whether we stay 100% with what happens in reality. For our calculations, it doesn't really matter if we cut off that tip here, because these dimensions are completely the same.
So now when we're looking at this animation, are the circle, the yellow circles that we're seeing that are coming from the X's, is that one of those concentric circles that was in the Mach cone?
Yeah, the Mach cone is entirely made up of circles. Here we only see two circles. This circle is the circle of the thump or the muzzle blast that originates from this position. And this circle is a circle that originated when the bullet was in this position. And it originated because of the supersonic speed of the bullet. And you can see that it originated before this bullet hit the trunk. And this is why this sound signal can still travel to Adam Bartholomew, even though the bullet has hit the trunk when that signal arrives at Bartholomew. Let's stop this concentric circle again in the position of Adam Bartholomew to make the argumentation as clear as possible. Here it stops. And then it goes on. And you can see that it absolutely doesn't matter if we cut off this tip or if we leave everything like it is in reality. And this is a calculation hack, because now we can use this distance for our calculations to precisely determine the position of Adam Bartholomew. Yeah, guys, and we can use the exact same hack for all the positions that I covered in my video. You will see that the sound signal originated before the bullet hit the trunk.
All right, so last time during the live stream, we had a few questions from people, and I'd like to just cover some of those to make sure that we're not leaving anything out. And then, of course, everyone let us know down below. Do you want us to do a live stream maybe this weekend or sometime soon? And I can bring them on, and you can ask live questions as well. The first question was, in this case, based on what you're saying, that would imply that Tyler Robinson is not guilty. So what are your thoughts on that?
I don't think Tyler Robinson is guilty. I don't think Tyler Robinson was on that roof. It was a sniper that knew Brian Harpole. Brian Harpole is the guard that was standing in front of the trunk, and the shot barely missed Brian Harpole. The sniper was someone that Brian Harpole trusted blindly. And I can't imagine that Tyler Robinson even knew Brian Harpole. Without a doubt, the shot went into the trunk, and this means there was no murder right to begin with. So Tyler Robinson is absolutely innocent, and he needs to be set on free foot immediately.
So you're saying that you think that the sniper was working for Harpole, and we know that that organization, they are very experienced. They have a lot of military experience. They have professional snipers, professional military contractors, right? They do this kind of stuff for a living, and they have a very hard vetting process. Do you think that someone could have possibly infiltrated into that organization and maybe did this on their own?
No, this was a team effort. I am convinced that the entire security team was in on it. I don't see any way that anyone could have infiltrated the security team. I think that you are very correct in saying that they are all ex-Marines and highly vetted people and ex-CIA agents. So I cannot imagine that an outsider could have infiltrated them. And we also must not forget that there were drones from US intelligence there. So on the contrary, it doesn't look like we have someone infiltrating the security team. No, it looks more like that the security team of TPUSA worked together with US intelligence to fake the death of Charlie Kirk.
So now you're saying that Tyler Robinson is not guilty. So due to that, what do you think should happen next? Now that you have all this information out, and a lot of people, if you looked in the comments, a lot of people believe your story. They believe what you're saying is true, and there's a lot of buy-in on it. So what do you think should happen next?
I think we should get this story out. The video on my channel hardly has 3,000 views at this point, and our podcast has some 30,000 views, and this is very little views given the geopolitical implications that these revelations have. Because let's face it, the Charlie Kirk death is a highly politicized event, and irrefutable proof that Charlie Kirk faked his death and is still alive will have dramatic consequences for US society. But I don't think we can hide this truth further. I think we should inform people. I think we have the duty to inform people what happened on September 10. So I hope that journalists from newspapers contact me. I hope that TV shows contact me. And I hope that other social media creators contact me so that we can get this story out and finally properly inform the US people.
Now, I do know that other channels have referenced our live stream. They referenced your story and your ideas. Didi got a podcast, specifically mentioned that he thought personally that this should have gotten millions of views. So the idea and the information backed by physics and science definitely has intrigued a lot of people. So I also hope that you guys share this out and get his word out. And also go over to his channel. Make sure you like and subscribe and share. Make sure you guys go and put some hours on his videos because he puts a lot of work into them. But currently, YouTube's not really pushing him out. That's why I'm giving him this platform to share his story.
Yeah, guys, since a lot of people have asked for that, here is again the Excel spreadsheet. I'm just going to give you a quick overview. So on top, here is what this is about. In a nutshell, it's all about this gap in the place of Adam Bartholomew. This is the gap between the value of a trunk shot and a Kirk shot. And this difference is the difference between these two values here. Now, overall, I've divided this into two parts. Here, we can essentially just see some calculations of some standard values. I just converted kilometers per hour into meters per second, for example, and I calculated the Mach angles for a lot of different velocities. So this is essentially just a helper table. And on the right side, I have done the calculations for each smartphone recording. Here is the velocity, as you can see here, from 2,700 to 2,300. Now, we can see here that for a trunk shot option, it's always this value that perfectly matches the crack and thumb gap. But for a Kirk shot option, which is essentially this part here, we can see that there is no consistent velocity. For example, here we have a crack thumb gap of 0.2006 for the recording 2 near the wall, and this would require a velocity of a bit over 2,700 feet per second to work. Now, if we apply this velocity to the Bartholomew recording, however, and if we try for a Kirk shot option, then we can see that this crack thumb gap is way bigger than the observed crack thumb gap. So this means that our calculated value does not match the observed value. And this is the proof why Kirk was never shot. And before you ask, yes, below here it says 0.13. And this would match that value roughly, but this would mean a velocity of 2,300 feet per second again. And if we apply these 2,300 feet per second to the recording 2 near the wall, almost behind Kirk, then we wind up with a crack thumb gap that is way shorter than the recorded crack thumb gap. But for the trunk shot option, this calculated value always matches the recorded value.
All right, so I had a lot of these questions, and so did you guys. You were like, okay, so we have all these different audio experts showing different things, and there were some inconsistencies. So now he's going to kind of talk about why other people may or may not have seen the same thing he's seeing, and why they came to different conclusions on distances and locations.
Okay, guys, yeah, I've also looked at the echoes, and I have to tell you that applying classical physics, we can determine the echoes with 100% accuracy. And in these echoes, the angle of incidence always matches the angle of reflection. And here we can see how this echo, for example, bounced off this wall and then was caught by this recording number 4. And we can see this by this spike here in Audacity. And it's not the only one. We can also see this signal here that bounced off this wall and then was caught by microphone 5. And this reflection is exactly this spike here in Audacity. Now, in my standalone video, I already showed you that this speaker sent out the crack that was recorded by one of these microphones here, and this crack was then reflected by this concrete wall into the mic of Adam Bartholomew, and also by this concrete wall that is in a 45-degree angle that reflected it then back to this wall and then back to the 45-degree angle wall and then into the mic by Adam Bartholomew. And the distance exactly matches what we observe in this Audacity evaluation here. And it's not the only one. We also have an echo from this wall here into the microphone of observation 7. And we can see that here. And all these echoes are in the exact place that we would expect them to be applying classical physics.
Okay, so one thing that's really interesting about this is, so say if I go onto Google Maps and I start drawing these angles, is there any way I can make mistakes on those? Like, can you demonstrate how someone could get it wrong?
Yes, Matthew, thank you for asking. It's very important to always maintain the angle of incidence matching the angle of reflection. We can zoom in here and we see that these two angles are exactly equally big. A common trap that people can fall into is to drag this tip of that path along a wall. Now we can see that this changes these two angles, and we can then clearly see that the angle of incidence does not match the angle of reflection anymore. Here in this extreme example on this outside wall, we can see that the angle of incidence is way smaller than the angle of reflection. So you should never make the mistake to drag such a path along a wall, because there is only one specific configuration with a proper angle of incidence matching an angle of reflection. And this is this configuration here. Let's adjust the red path. This is the only proper configuration. And we must not really change it, or else we get a path that is in conflict with standard physics.
So now this is referencing reflections, correct?
Yes.
If they're looking at this, they have to make sure that the incidence and the outward angle, they have to match perfectly. So if they're doing any kind of calculations within this courtyard or off any of these buildings, if those angles don't perfectly match each other, then that's bad data, basically, is what you're saying.
Yes, that is meaningless data.
Now, that was definitely more in depth than the last time that we did the live stream, because as a lot of people know, we actually had some technical issues. We couldn't get some of the audio to play. But this time, I hope this really brings everything together. And we really expect people to share this out and blow this video up to get this idea out, because, like I said, a lot of you guys really bought into this, and this is what a lot of you believe in your hearts as well. We are going to do a live stream here shortly, And if you guys want to see that, make sure you hit the like and get this video spread out. And I will post that when that's going to be here in the near future, possibly this weekend. So as always, El Geist, we appreciate you being on. And did you have any final thoughts for the people?
Yeah, guys, I hope I could answer a lot of your questions, but I'm sure you're going to have a lot more questions. And I am looking forward to answering all your questions in our live stream.